Hello, hello, hello. This is Adrienne Berg, and this is The Ageless Traveler. And we recently took a poll, favorite podcast that you've listened to the most. And one of them was called Italian Wannabe. And in that show, the guest baked bread. Well, I have to tell you the truth. When I think about Italy and I think about eating, bread is not my first thought. Wine is my first thought. And I thought, what? Let's have a specialist, somebody who really understands European wines. In fact, he's actually the author of Trails to Vines. And you'll be able to know how to get that wonderful book because it talks about notes and images for Europeans' timeless wine regions. One of them, many of them are actually in Italy. And Stefano Zanoncello, he is hospitality and project specialist at Angelini Wine and Estates. And of course, he knows about several regions in all the world with regard to wine. But we're going to talk about Veneto. And he's going to say it right, not like he's from Brooklyn. So, Stefano, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, really.
Well, we're going to have a lot of fun, but I do want to concentrate on Italian wines today. You have so many certifications as a wine specialist, as a sommelier, but also as an Italian wine specialist. You're certified. And I have to ask this question first. What would you say is the essence, something that makes it an Italian wine, not just because the grapes are grown in Italy, but because there's a certain infusion of spirit that I think we all feel, just even when we hear the sound of the wine being poured into a glass, all of a sudden we feel a little bit different if it's French wine versus Italian wine, or let's say even beer. All of this gives us a very different feeling. Why do you think that happens, and what's the spirit of the Italian wine?
But I think the Italian wines are really drenched in culture, culture that goes back to thousands of years. Actually, virtually every variety and every wine region has roots in pre-Roman times. So the cultivation of the vines goes back to Etruscan, even before that. So you understand that through these thousands of years, not just the wine industry developed, the winemaking techniques and agriculture, but also the gastronomy and the cultures around vinification and wine grew together. So it is not a coincidence that now when you go to Italy, you go to Tuscany, you have very earthy tannic Sangiovese that goes very well with Cinghiale, which is wild boar, or where I'm from, which is Verona, our beautiful Amarone goes very well with risotto Amarone. So I think culture is the most important thing when you speak of Italian wines. You cannot just drink a wine, a variety, without talking about the historical context of the wine itself. And I think it really adds so much depth and layers to the experience.
So one of the things I want to ask you about is when you go to Italy and you go to a fine restaurant or even someone's home, they are pairing. They call them pairings here, and the wine with food. And you just did that. You did that automatically, right? Do
Correct.
you, as a specialist, have to know that as well as understand the wine? Do you have to know what foods it goes with as well?
Well, I think the Italian wines especially have an innate ability to really be very versatile and go with a wide array of dishes and ingredients, which I think it makes very easy and fun to experiment. I usually start with the wine, and 99% of the times the food goes along with it because of its innate versatility of the Italian wines, which are always very fresh, never heavy, very bright, and usually the brightness, the acidity really is has a refreshing factor on the palate and really makes it almost like a natural partner for a wide range of food for all the Mediterranean. There are some textbook pairings, if you will, but going back to Italian wines and European wines in general, I think the chances are you're gonna have a fun and pleasurable experience even if you don't spend too much time studying it.
So I'm very familiar with the regions of France and also the way they classify their wines. Tell me about Italy. Are there separate regions? Are there different ways of classifying wine? Because it's very useful for us to understand it intellectually. I myself probably could not do a taste test and tell you which wine got an award and which one did not. I just know what I like. But I'm curious to know, to be more of a scholar about this. So clue us in.
Well, first off, I think you said it right. The good wine is the wine that you like. Sometimes it can be a wine of €10, $10 or $15. But if there's the right wine, the right place, the right time, it's just perfect. However, yeah, Italy is much more, say, confusing than, let's say, France. First off, all the 20 Italian regions grow grapes. There are over 200, 300 indigenous varietals. So really to try to master all the varietals is a very daunting experience. And all of the regions have common traits. They have mountains, they have lowland, and they have sea. So I would say the first distinction, it would be probably for me to divide the peninsula in three parts, north, center, and south. And then when it goes to denominations, to really understand the political steps behind it, is the highest ranking would be DOCG. And then a step down, you will have DOC. And then a third step down, you will have IGT. Those are hierarchy of quality at a degree. I think you can find excellent wines at every stage. However, DOCG, which is Denominazione di Origine Controllata e Garantita, the body of government wants to guarantee the origin of the wine. So you know that if it has that denomination, the producer in each region has to follow very strict regulations. So you have a product that is one of the best products of the land.
So let's do a shameless plug here. Angelini Wines and Estates. Tell us a little bit about their wines and their history.
So Angelini is actually a group of wineries, because now the tendency is to really put like-minded wineries together to leverage marketing and finance. So this is a little bit of where the future. This is happening also in Burgundy, in France, across France as a whole, even Bordeaux. Angelini owns 8 wineries right now from the Marche region, then Tuscany, then Friuli Venezia Giulia, and then Veneto. In Veneto, they have Bertani, which is the winery where I work. Bertani is just outside Verona, is the oldest and most famous winery in the region, and they're known for the Amarone. So really, really deep rooted in the territory, making wine with a lot of actually timeless expertise. The wines are really, truly timeless. I mean, they haven't changed stylistically in the last 170 years, which is when the winery was open. So yeah, I think for me, it was very important to work for a winery that was really reflecting the values that I believe in. And this, how can I call it? Yeah, it's unwavering dedication, commitment to quality, a really never compromising following trends in the market, but really have a lot of integrity, really build a very strong identity for the winery, for Bertani, which is part of Angelini. So for me, this is like the history that repeats itself. Really, we're just passenger, right? And we do our small part to really make sure that this wine culture is endless. It keeps on going forever.
So, as a travel show, I'm not a culinary and travel writer. I do a lot of taste testing because I love it. But I am an aficionado of Prosecco. So I'm going to ask you a very specific question. I was near Trieste, and we were doing a road trip, and there was something, I saw a little sign. It said the Prosecco Trail. And I took that trail, and it was wonderful. I didn't even know there was a Prosecco Trail. But that was really fascinating to me. And of course, you've written Trails to Vines. So is there a particular trail in your area that somebody who is a tourist could simply go from winery to winery, as we do in Napa, here in Sonoma, Paso Robles?
Well, there is not a trail per se, but there is one main road that really goes in and out each canyons and gorges. And so really you cannot drive 5 minutes without hitting 10 wineries. And the Valpolicella is a long area because it really starts on the shore of Lake Garda, which is Italy's largest body of water. And it goes all the way to the town of Soave to the east. So it covers 8 to 9 different valleys. You can actually do them in one day because all these roads connect with each other. But I mean, I think the most important, if it was the first time to go to Valpolicella, I would probably focus on Valpolicella Classica, which is a sub-region of the broader Valpolicella. Like what you will see in Chianti and Chianti Classico, there are 2 different areas. The Chianti Classico is a sub-region of the larger Chianti. Same for us in Valpolicella, you have the Valpolicella Classica, which is the oldest, more traditional and more historical part of Valpolicella. There will be 3 valleys they're parallel to each other, very easy to travel, very easy to drive through. Again, there is not like a trail per se, but it's like or there are a couple of roads, really, you cannot miss it. And they go in and out these valleys, and among, vineyards and mountains in the distance. You can see Lake Garda because it's visible from every hilltop.
Now, do the wineries do the same as they do here in California, which is welcome you to have taste testings, welcome you to buy? Tell us a little bit about how you would, as a tourist interested in Italian wines, visit the wineries and how you'd arrange to get some of the things you purchased, because sometimes you can't.
I have a good news for you. It's getting much, much better right now. We have actually a brand new system that we started 3 months ago, and it makes the shipping very, very smooth. So basically, this is being adopted by most wineries, and I think it's going to catch up very soon. So basically, if you're a tourist from let's say, California, and you come to see our winery and you want to buy 20 bottles of wine, we can give you already the estimate of the shipping cost, and you will pay everything at the store. And then the wines will be shipped. We give you tracking after 2 days, and then it will deliver to your doorstep. So because of that, I think you said it right. Italy, especially in the Northeast, was not as developed as a tourist industry, like I would say California. But things are changing rapidly, and then I would be surprised if not every single winery will provide that service in the next 6, 7, 8 months.
So one of the things I learned in a recent trip through the California wine country is that the clubs, the wine clubs that you could join, are changing. And they're changing because of young people. Young people do not join the club. They like a subscription where they can select a particular wine that they want, not what is being offered. Is anything happening with regard to that in the Italian wine regions?
It's still a little bit conservative. We don't have the same mentality of Americans, unfortunately, and I think we are suffering from that. And it is a big debate of how to gain the love and trust of young generations these days. So I think every winery is trying to find a way to distinguish itself. Wine clubs, I'm not aware of any winery offering wine clubs at this precise moment. So
I think that's important, because people who do go, and if they're US or even UK, they're used to buying wine in a certain way. And when they don't see it there, they're surprised. So I do want to get that out now, that if you see a wine and you love that wine, you make the relationship with the vintner. You make the relationship with somebody like Stefano, so that you can keep that relationship, because you're not going to get a ton of marketing out of Italy telling you to constantly buy. And here we have, it's Christmas, we got 20% off. You're not going to find that. This is so family. Even the big, like Angelini, 8 wineries. It's like a family. It's very different. And is that one of the things that, I mean, you are yourself Italian, but is that one of the things that brought you back to Italy? Because you've been living in the US as well.
Well, yes, exactly. Actually, my daughter was born in Massachusetts, and after 5 years, I really wanted her to see a sliver, at least, of a slower lifestyle. And yes, I think you come back here and then you see all the things that don't work and the things that you would love to change. At the same time, I think that there is something familiar, kindness, even in every aspect of life, even at work, that I think is missing maybe in the US. The US is a very fast environment, and honestly, the ideal would be probably something in between, right? But I think it's nice to come here and talk to people, and they have passion, and I myself, we don't try to sell to people. We really want to share passion. And when you do that, I think the sales come automatically. But we really want to gain the trust and the love of tourists and people, especially because Valpolicella is known, but it's not as known as Burgundy or Montalcino or Barolo. It's still a little bit in the background.
So we come back, we're going to talk about 2 very practical things. One is the glass in which you should put your wine. Something, even though I know very little about wine, I know a lot about the glasses you should use, and I'll discuss that with you in a moment. And the other thing is a little bit deeper dive on, if you're a do-it-yourself tourist, what to see and what to do in the parts of Italy that have these fine and beautiful wines. So don't you guys go anywhere. We'll be right back. If you've been thinking about a cruise, I've definitely got you covered with Cruises It. Now, we have just become affiliated with them, And who are they? Well, Cruises It is the top agency for all the main cruise lines and some of the less known cruise lines as well. Cruises It has access to booking space that's been open years in advance, so you can get the best cabins, and that's just number one. But they also make the prices lower. The cruise lines give Cruises It their own exclusive agency discounts. And if you're not from the cruise line, they have their own agency discounts that would apply as well. So you get both any discounts you would normally get on the cruise line, plus additional discounts that are given exclusively to Cruises It because they bring in so much business. On top of all those discount perks, when you book with them, you get the best rate guaranteed. And this is because Cruise Fare Watch system takes place. Now, what Cruises It does is it tracks the pricing until the final payment date. So you keep in mind that to get the best rate guaranteed, you have to use my site. We have affiliated with them specifically. I sat down, I met with them in Tucson, Arizona. I met with Marianne Weather. We've now become good friends. She gave me a direct line. Not only a link, which you can certainly use right away, but if you have questions, even a specific phone number. Cruises It offers this not just to anyone that is one of our followers, but if you have friends and family, you can bring them in too. So just take a look at the show notes and you will see our dedicated phone line and our dedicated link. Happy sailing. And now we're back. And we're back with Stefano. And I'm going to try to say this right, even though I'm from Brooklyn. Zanoncello. Zanoncello. Sounds like a poem by itself. So, and talk about the poetry. There's a little bit of poetry actually in your life because you've written in your own description that you had wine as a passion, but then you went to school. You went to school, you learned about wine, and it became a life purpose. And it shows you that if you're passionate about something, it could lead anywhere. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Oh yes. So I was in banking. I work in banking in the banking industry here in Verona for almost 15 years. And it is something that I never really liked, but it was a good salary, a good career, very safe environment. So why change? And I think I made some attempts to change my life numerous times, but never successfully. At some point, after traveling many times to the US, I felt a need to go to the US, to go overseas, because I felt it was the right place to really try something different, something new, and be a new person. So I quit my job. I moved to Boston, and then I faced another struggle because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had all these things that I loved: the geography, culture, geology, science, history. I was struggling to find an element that will put all these things together. And I went to BU, which is Boston University in Boston, and I took a bunch of classes. And one of them was a wine program run by two very famous figures, actually. They're two master of wines from Massachusetts. And after the first lesson, I realized that all of these elements that I love so much actually had a common denominator in wine. And that was epiphany for me, really. And that I thought at that moment, I remember exactly when it was in 2013. I thought, okay, this is my career. It was very hard because I had to start from the bottom, and I was 35, unemployed, living abroad, a very expensive part of the world. And I had to work with teenagers, basically, at the register of wine shops. So it was hard, but it was a calling, I guess you can call it. And I don't know, I keep on finding everyday reason to love what I do. And I'm always very curious. And I think if you're curious, wine gives you endless opportunity to really enrich your life. And I also think that, again, if you go beyond the bottle itself, wine provides you with a little luxury every day. It's a story. There's people behind it. There's villages, and there's a culture. There's history. Of course, you can just stop at the label and be fine with it, with the taste, with the flavor of it. But if you really do a little digging, and nowadays you can find information very easily through internet, you can really make your experience extra valuable, and really that can become a luxury every day. So that was a little bit my life in my last 20 years, 15 years.
So I have to say that wine is a big part of my life for somebody who knows so little about the technology behind the growing. I actually do not cook. My joke is I have only supervised visitation with my stove. I'm not allowed, but I have a little towel that says everything. It's a picture of a woman. It happens to look a little bit like me, but it's a bought towel and it says, dinner is poured. Because every day I have a little wine. Now you'd say, and I'm a person who really deals in longevity.
Yeah.
And so the beginning, of course, was get red wine because it has resveratrol in it. And then they debunked that a little bit. Now you can buy it in a pill. And then some say, oh, after a certain age, you shouldn't have too much alcohol. Well, that's true. But I honestly think that the benefits of wine, even if it's half a glass, you don't have to go overboard, in your relaxation, in your feeling connected with the food that you're eating. And I have to say, if you're feeling connected with the person that you're with, wine is a very useful thing. My husband, who does not drink, I say, well, this is as happy as he's going to be all day. And he wakes up with I like it. So I'm saying that loud and proud. But here's my complaint. People who should know better pour wine in the wrong glass. And I want to talk to you about this. I love Prosecco, and in general, I like Cava, I like Champagne, I like things that have bubbles. And most of the time, they should be in a flute or in a champagne glass, and I do know the difference. And I don't understand why bartenders, even in the most expensive bars in the world, will put this in a wine glass, or put wine in the wrong glass, or white wine in a red glass. It's not just the way it shows up. It makes a difference. Can you discuss that a little bit, or am I just picky?
No. There's nothing wrong about being picky for stuff. And yes, I think there's a truth to that. I am once again a little more relaxed with glasses. I think there's a line of glasses that every big maker produce is called universal, which is, I think, an excellent glass for everyday use and can enhance almost every wine. But I think there are, first off, yes, I like my stem. I don't want to touch. I want to warm up my glass. So some people use like water glasses, regular glasses. I would advise against that. You don't want to change too much the temperature of what you're drinking. So stem glass would be definitely very important for wine. I like my glass to be thin, if possible. I don't want to have the sensation to put a chunk of glass in my mouth. I want to have a very thin glass, a larger bottom, and then it funnels like a tulip, right, at the top, because you want to have the wine able to move around at the bottom and to really a lot of surface of the wine to, when you swirl it, to get in contact with oxygen, and then you have all of these elements that really rushes through the glass, and then as it closes up near to your nose, you really get all of the elements. I actually also drink my bubble with those glasses because I think that for me the flute doesn't allow the wine at the bottom to really move around, and you really it's a little bit constrained, and the wider one don't really funnel the notes in your nose. They are too open. They kind of disperse. So I think a tulip shaped glass, thin glass, and stem would be good for almost every wine.
So it's interesting, and this is my last, as I say, picky comment. The flute, which you're right, it does not allow the oxygen and the wine to breathe. As a result, it keeps the bubbles longer. So if you're a person who likes the bubbles, you like the flute. If you're a person who's very into the taste, you probably want the tulip shape that you're talking about. So that's our dissertation. That's our 2-minute dissertation on glasses. Now I want to talk about another tourism issue, and that is wine tasting. So you've got usually a winery that's selected what they want you to taste, and you get a little list, and you're supposed to check off. First you smell it, you're supposed to be so sophisticated, then you swish it around in your mouth, and then you swallow it. But I don't know if there's any hints and tips, because for me, by the time I get to the fourth one, I'm not tasting it anymore because I'm not a connoisseur. And so are most people who go. We all pretend, we know. But what would any hints and tips for wine tasting for the average person who loves wine, but really is not you? It's not a specialist.
Well, I'll tell you, I have the same problem. I mean, I think my taste buds and my palate gets overwhelmed if it tastes more than 10 wines. I think I hear this through a lot of people. A lot of people that know more than I do, they have the same issue. So I don't trust anybody who can go through 50 wines and be totally happy. the palate does not perform the same, and the nose either. So I think that 4 to 5 wines would be ideal for a tasting, and usually wineries set it up in a way that is like a crescendo, like a progression. So you start with a wine that really affects you the least, your palate, and then you end up with a one that has more weight. So I would say for me, 4 to 5 wines in a tasting setting are excellent. It's a great number because you want to go back to some wine. The wines, when they're poor, they develop for the next 15, 20, 30 minutes. So you want to be able to go back. If you have more than 5, I think it becomes almost like a job, a little too much, to be honest with you. It takes the fun out of it. You want to master those 4 or 5 that you have in front of you and hear the stories and know why they taste as they do. And I think there will be a sweet spot for me as far as number. I do a lot of tasting with people, with tourists. And we do tasting with very old wines. We do tastings with wines from the 60s that we have in our cellars.
Wow.
Yes, but people come. They are mostly from the U.S. They are collectors. They never want more than 5 wines for the same reason.
I want to talk about wine tourism experiences, and I'm going to widen this a little. Some of the best experience I've had as a tourist have been through wineries. And I'll give you 2 examples that have nothing to do with Italy. One of them is Australia, where they tend to have big events in the wine fields themselves. You go into the fields, they have a beautiful dinner, a culinary dinner. Of course, it's Australia, so it's a barbecue, right? And then they'll have their Penfold wine or whatever the winery is.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is Germany. Germany does something called a Hurge. Those are green wines. Those are wines that, I don't know, they've been around for 5 minutes. And they are very strong. And there again, you have your German food, and it's outdoors in this region. And you can get drunk very fast. These are really strong wines. They don't even have a label yet. They're just in a bottle. But these have been incredible food and wine experiences. Interestingly, in Italy, where I've been more times than I've been to either of those, every experience I've had has been in somebody's home. It hasn't been in these big event type of spaces. But is that occurring? Can you book a table in a winery these days in Italy, or is it just the private tastings that you have?
Even that part is changing a little bit. I think the tendency was to have this very small tasting, almost, you're right, going to someone's house. It's changing a little bit because wineries are branching out to new experiences, trying to catch more people, young people, and people, because they want to see. I think they want to have a contact with the land that makes the wine to really get more intimacy, more attachment. You want to bring people to the vineyard, and if you go to the vineyard, why not doing a tasting in a vineyard and do maybe a little aperitivo in the vineyard? So we ourselves as Bertani, we are working on that. We have a beautiful property, so we're doing that. And I know other producers in the area and in Tuscany and other regions of Italy that are doing that, they're branching out to the experiences. Although we are not as advanced as Australia or Germany probably, but we are catching up.
So if you're going to fly in to see your region and you're a do-it-yourselfer, where would you fly in, and then how would you drive through and get accommodation?
Well, if you're going to see the Valpolicella, you can fly into Verona directly.
Right.
Usually there are connecting flights from Frankfurt and Munich. That would be the easiest from the US. Or you can fly into Venice if you want to have a more wider Veneto experience. They're very different, but actually Verona and Venice, although they are in completely different situations, they're very close to each other. They're like an hour apart by car. So you can actually see there are actually floating vines in Venice, which is very fascinating. You can go to Conegliano Valdobbiadene to see the home of Prosecco, and then you can go to Soave, which is in Verona, and Valpolicella. Those would be, for me at least, the big 4 regions that are really interesting to see because of the culture and the wine. But if you are trying to come to Valpolicella, I will land in Verona. And from Verona, the region itself is very close from the airport. You can probably drive in 25 minutes and be right in the heart of Valpolicella, which is on the foothills of these mountains alongside Lake Garda. And I think it's the best place to do it by yourself because it's still very homey. You can still knock on people's door to do tastings unless you go to see bigger wineries that are more developed. But because the whole hospitality is still in its infancy, it's kind of developing right now. you can still go without booking, without reservations. You can just go and knock on people's door. I think Valpolicella maybe much more than other most famous regions like Tuscany, for example, or Piemonte, is better most enjoyed by doing by yourself and just traveling and going to see places that maybe, on the spur of your imagination, you just go there rather than planning too much.
It's interesting because I do love group tours, and particularly we deal a lot with solo travelers, and they love to go on tours together and meet each other, and there's a lot of camaraderie. But for some reason, in Italy, it always feels best to be a do-it-yourselfer. And it could be the hospitality of the people, really, without, minimizing hospitality everywhere in the world. There's something about Italy almost to the point that you can't get away from it. Because I do remember going with my little boy and my husband to stay at somebody's home, but it was like an Airbnb. Now, there was no such thing in those days, but it was like that. We couldn't leave. Every 2 minutes, are you going to be here for breakfast? Because we're baking bread. Oh, you're leaving after breakfast? I think you should leave after lunch, because at lunch, we're going to have special cheeses. We'll take you. It's different. There's something about that slowness that brought you back home.
Yes.
That's true. And then when we did the Italian Wannabe show, it was what came out. It was quite a bit of difference, which is wonderful. And despite the fact that you've got some of the greatest museums in the world in Italy, and you've got some of the, the spectacular sites on checklists, people don't come home talking about that. They come home talking about the guy that served them spaghetti that didn't feel like anybody else's spaghetti they ever had. Am I right?
I take that as a compliment. Yes, it happens to me almost every day. Really, we deal with all Americans, which are very, very kind all the time. And they're usually couples. So, my husband and wife, they come. I had a couple on Saturday, and they tasted some old wines, and they left the tasting with basically a page of advice on where to go to eat and stroll and lake and do this and that. So I think you really feel we do it with love. I mean, we don't get any recognition, any money, anything, right? It's just really that we want people to really enjoy, feel at home, and see the good things and say, hey, don't go there. There's a tourist trap. Go here instead. And then, of course, they send an email and say, oh my gosh, your advices make everything amazing. Because we know the inside out, right? And I think we really genuinely want people to love our country, to really like our country, enjoy their time here. So yeah, I agree with you.
So before we take our next break, which will be our last break for the show, I do want to talk about accommodations. Now, things have changed enormously. You've got Airbnb and Vrbo, you've got Booking.com hotel, everything you could think of. What would be your recommendation on people who are do-it-yourselfers with a car, and they may want to stay for several days in one place, but they would like it to be the right place?
That's a good question. My wife is a travel agent. So
first of all, this is why this show is so much in my heart. It's my passion. We hardly take any advertising. We want our listeners to know the best. I did not even know that Stefano's wife was a travel agent. I had no idea. Now that I know, I want to make sure that she tells my listeners where to go and what to see. So I'm going to invite her through you to give us an article, because we want somebody who's on the ground. That's what this is really all about. Yeah. Most of my people, I have to tell you, and if you're listening, shake your head yes, have been to Italy. Not one time, but 20 times. And so for them to go back, it has to be a very, very special experience. And that's what we're really all about here, that very, very special experience where you say, I've been to Italy so many times, but I never saw this before. So we're going to be right back with more about this. I think this is such a fabulous way of opening the door, particularly for people who've had some travel burnout. And they say, where are we going to go next? We've been everywhere. Well, you haven't. Don't you guys go anywhere. We'll be right back. To become and stay an Ageless traveler, subscribe to our free weekly newsletter, Travel Tuesday. Just visit agelesstraveler.com, click subscribe, and enter your name and email for a surprise gift. What's the surprise? Well, if I tell you, it's not a surprise. What I can say is that Travel Tuesday tackles travel barriers like money, health, companionship, and even travel burnout, and gives you a taste of what our blog and podcast have to offer every single week, helping you explore the world effortlessly. And now we're back with Stefano Zanoncello. He is the author of Trails to Vines. He is also a certified wine specialist, a certified sommelier, a certified Italian wine specialist. He's working very closely now with Angelini Wines and Estates. They have 8 different wineries in Italy. And we're really visiting what it means to be a tourist who loves wine, but might not be a wine connoisseur, and really wants to understand what it's like to taste, to enjoy. Now let's talk about your book for a minute. Now, this book is not just about Italy, it's European wine trails. And let's step away from Italy for a moment. If you would have your second choice of where to go for wine tastings or your favorite trail, what would we find in the book?
Well, I would say France. It was my first love in wine, and I think there are some amazing regions, some of them kind of undiscovered. And I think they really have a lot of value for travelers. They're not maybe on the map of the hottest spots, but that they deliver in terms of cuisine, landscape, culture, and wine. So why not, right? One of them is Alsace, for example, which is, for me, is like a 6 hours to drive from Verona to Alsace. So it's something they can do relatively easily. And that is beautiful. That is aesthetically stunning. Very ancient history. Very interesting history, especially during World War II. It was German, then French, and then German again, and then French. There's a lot of mix. It's a borderland, right on the Rhine River, and the wines are very, very much unique. Have a strong identity with the land. The cuisine is a mix of French and German. I mean, you cannot really want more than that. There's beauty for everybody. If you like history, if you like the wines, if you like culture, if you like gastronomy, I think he has the highest number of Michelin star restaurant in the world. So, I would definitely recommend to go there and don't be intimidated. There are lots of white wines, but they're full body, and there's a wide spectrum of wines as well. So yeah, I say Europe has a lot to deliver.
I took a walking tour. I belong to something called Free Walkers, and we're long distance walkers. And we'll go 25 miles in a day fairly easily.
Oh, wow.
And we went 9 days through Alsace on a wine tour. It is the most wonderful place to walk, and they have paths through the wineries. You're just not going through the woods or even other beautiful places. You're going actually through the wineries into the little towns. And the one distinction between going to Alsace and anywhere else is that the wine tastings start at 7:30 in the morning. So you can have quite a day for yourself in Alsace. So yes, it's a wonderful place. Very good food. I know I just had to tell everybody. So go ahead. I know there was another region you were going to undiscovered that you were saying.
And you're right, in Strasbourg, which is the capital. So if you really want like a European capital feel, you can also go to Strasbourg, which is right in Alsace. And you have more urban feels. I would say another one that I really like a lot was Jura, which is south of Burgundy on the border with Switzerland. And right next to it, there is a northern Rhone. So south of the city of Vienne, which is south of Beaujolais, you have Burgundy, and then you have Beaujolais, and then you have the northern Rhone. Very impressive vineyards. Not as quaint as Alsace, actually quasi post-industrial. But still very, very fascinating, and not a place where people really go there for tourism. So there's a lot to discover. The food is very unique also. The weather changes very rapidly. The Rhone River meanders through the valleys. It's very fascinating. So, and then from there you can go to Provence. I mean, it's really, really endless. But those regions, somehow people tend to gravitate more to Burgundy and Bordeaux, which understandably so. But there's a lot to discover in lesser known parts of France as well.
No, absolutely. And one of my favorite trips, my husband and I are going to actually spend our 55th anniversary this August. Yeah. Well, the jury is still out. You don't have to applaud. But it's been a long time. And I will tell you that we're really going on the European waterway. It's a barging trip. It's from winery to winery. in different parts of France. This time for us, it's going to be champagne, and it's fabulous. But for those of you who are not great wine lovers, they go to Scotland. They go on a whiskey barging also, which is a whole other topic. Also very, very interesting. In terms of, again, what is hidden, let's end with that because we really are looking for that. You mentioned Verona. I once went on I called it the Shakespeare Italian trip. It was Verona, Venice, and Padua. And I think Padua is underrated.
For me, the classic are classic for a reason. They're timeless and they really set the standards for the entire nations. Really, I have a passion for Chianti Classico and Montalcino, which I know they're already very known by the public. Barolo also for me is very, very important. And then Burgundy, Alsace, the Rhone. Those are for me the regions. They really set the standards for quality, hierarchy of vineyards, vinifications in general, the history. They were all started by the Romans. There's a lot in common, and they all have a very striking features, naturalistic feature and characteristic. So those are more classic, not too much hidden gems, I would say. But 2 hours from here, or an hour and a half, you can go to Alto Adige. I was there on Sunday with a group of friends, and we were wine tasting in Alto Adige, and you can imagine the beauty of those places. And they're just an hour and 15 minutes north of Verona. And they speak German, and the cuisine is different, and the slopes are so steep, you can imagine people actually cultivating vines there. It's the fight against nature.
Yes. I have to say that my love affair with travel had a lot to do with Europe per se, because it's one of those places in the world where you can actually enter different worlds in a minute. And I will also say that although the EU is great, I did like it when you had different currencies, you actually had a border, you went through these and you knew you were going someplace else. You just had that feeling that I'm entering yet another world or I'm leaving that world. And today it's more like the US, it's homogenous. You have the same currency. Certain things are the same. You have the same EU rules. They're very good. They're great for accessibility, but the feeling of being somewhere totally different is slightly diminished.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, I write that on my book. I said, sometimes driving, to go to Alsace, for example, I have to drive to Switzerland. But honestly, the switch from Switzerland to France is like uneventful. You really don't realize that you are in a different country. And yes, it's true that if you stop in other grid, they speak German. I mean, across the border, it changes completely the language, but you don't have the feel that you're really entering. You're leaving behind Switzerland and you move into a different place. I miss that part very much. And it's also very convenient to have the same currency, to be honest with you, and also very convenient not to have borders controls anymore. So you can really travel more freely. But yes, I miss that.
Yeah, and I guess you have to be a traveler of a certain age to appreciate that, to understand that, because my grandchildren won't know even what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
And it becomes even more interesting when you're in Eastern Europe, where you really had a distinction between the countries, and now it's Eastern Europe, and that's not true. Croatia, Montenegro, Bosnia, they're all different places. But for a tourist going on, let's say, a 9-day trip, and was it Zagreb or was it, Budapest? You don't remember. But okay, travel is fabulous no matter what. And so is wine. So we thank you so much for being with us. It's been the delightful conversation I expected it to be.
Thank you so much. It was amazing. And whenever I can share my passion for wine, travel, cultures, please, I love to, because I think this is the most important thing that makes humans interesting people,
We thank you all so much. Now, you know that everything we do is free of charge for you guys, including our weekly Travel Tuesday newsletter, including our ebooks. Never stop traveling.